This is Lightning Power Lunch with Dave Mishkin and Greg Linnelli on Lightning Radio.
Obviously, the first 3.5 minutes wasn't good enough, and they capitalized on 2 opportunities. We got a power play. We got some momentum from the power play, even though we didn't score, and felt like we played a lot better after that.
Yeah, I mean, we pushed back, so just the start was not good enough. Fixed that, and a lot of the game was good, but yeah, gotta have a better start.
Yeah, it's tough. We just come off an 8-day road trip. Got in super late and then came to play a game. So those, history have proven to be tough, but it didn't stay the way we came out. Now, saying that, for 57 minutes, we leaned on them, and they're first place team, one of the best teams in the league, and I thought, as that game kept going, we did a lot of good things, and but you dig yourself 2-0 hole. We were able to come back and salvage a point, but it's tough to do that against good teams. So give the guys credit. They battled. It was just it's a really tough start for us.
What do they say? It's not how you start, it's how you finish. But maybe for the Lightning, that wasn't the case last night a bit.
Yeah.
In terms of chasing that game as much as they did against a really good Toronto team. We've got an hour to talk about it, and we want to do that with you guys at Bolts Radio. Lightning fall in overtime to the Leafs. Both teams got a point. The Leafs get the extra one, and the Lightning now in a position still in second place where got to do maybe a little bit more makeup with the remaining games on the schedule and hope for Toronto slips up a little bit more if they won first place. But we're going to kind of talk about all of that here on the show at Bolts Radio if you want to get involved in the conversation. Partner, the start was troubling. The inability to generate more offense or more shots on net was a big factor last night. And we can give credit to Toronto if you want to for how they defended. You can give credit to the posts and the crossbar because there was some luck involved there for sure. However you want to break that down, it was a factor. Lightning had a lot of shot attempts. Just things weren't clicking as we typically see. Thought there was maybe some opportunities to make the goaltender a little uncomfortable, that they just couldn't quite do it. And Toronto's got some good players too, who ended up making some plays. I will just say on a side note, every time I watch him play the Lightning, I always feel like Austin Matthews is the best player on the ice. He is a dynamic player, and I'm stating the obvious, but when you kind of watch him up close, he stays out there for long periods of time. He can stick handle. He can back check. The pass he made in the overtime was a great feed. He's a hell of a player, and that's saying something because there's a lot of really good players on the ice last night. So I think nice that they were able to get a point, and I don't want that to be lost in the conversation because they had not done that previously against Toronto. So I do think, and you pointed this out to Phil, I think this was by far their best outing against Toronto, which is a positive sign if you believe they needed that in case they face them in the playoffs at some point to say we can go toe-to-toe. But I think disappointing because you had a chance before the game started to look at this and say, we get 2 here, boys, in regulation. Yeah. We're right there for first place. But it didn't happen, and the Lightning sit now in second place.
There are some parts of last night's game that just don't sit well with you if you're a Lightning fan. They didn't sit well with John Cooper. You could tell he was still really irked in the postgame about the Lightning start. He called it embarrassing. So the parts that are not sitting well with you if you are pro-Lightning and not pro-Toronto, the start for sure was a big problem. The fact that they dropped a point to Toronto, so another 3 points back, and both teams have the same number of games left, 4. And the Lightning continued to have problems with the Matthews line. That's been a fairly consistent theme throughout the regular season. I mean, that line has really hurt the Lightning. Nyes in particular, I mean, he scored a lot of goals this year against the Lightning. He had a hat trick last night. Matthews has been very dynamic. Marner, that's the line, right? So I think it was a little disappointing the Lightning didn't do a better job of not making them work more. Because that was really the one Toronto line that was consistently making things uncomfortable for the Lightning, with an honorable mention to Nylander, who was kind of quiet and loud depending on the shift. There were some points where he was very dangerous, and there were other points where he and his line mates were kind of stuck in the defensive zone. So, like, beyond just, like, looking at this one game and saying, well, that was, game 47, and we're moving on to game 48, and let's look at game 47 like we do on the show. This game, I think, had a little more to it because they could meet in the playoffs. It was the final meeting before the playoffs between the teams. The Lightning hadn't won a game against Toronto. I said I thought Vasilevsky's probably his 2 worst starts this year in what has been a Vezina caliber season have come against Toronto. There was a lot that kind of went into this game, and then kind of what do we take from this game projecting forward? Can we do that? And the first thing that I will say is not much. And I'm just going to give you a bunch of examples where what happens in a regular season series doesn't really mean a lot when you meet in a playoff series. Right at the top of the list, Columbus Blue Jackets, Tampa Bay Lightning 2019. Lightning pretty decisively swept the season series from Columbus.
Right.
Playoffs went in a different direction. I mean, the Lightning have been swept twice under John Cooper. It happened against Columbus. It happened in his first full season as a head coach against Montreal, 2014. You know what this regular season series was between the Lightning and Montreal in 2013-14? Lightning went 3-0-1 against Montreal. So sometimes it tells us stuff, sometimes it doesn't. Like the next year, the Lightning went 5-0 against Montreal. They played them 5 times. I can't remember why in the regular season. And then they won the playoff series. So this is probably the closest comparison, which I do think that this one game was important. The Lightning had a hard time for years with the Boston Bruins, especially in Boston. 2017-18, I think they played the Bruins 4 times, but they had lost the first 3 to Boston. And the final game in the season series was played in Tampa, and the Lightning won decisively, 5-0. And they met in the playoffs in the second round. The Lightning won that series. Did the 5-0 win really, like, was that the biggest reason why the Lightning won the playoff series some weeks later? Probably not. Did it help them to have a decisive win against a team that kind of had their number? Yeah, it might have. But did that really matter when the playoffs began? If I remember correctly, the Bruins blew out the Lightning in game 1 in that series at Amalie.
Was that the
then
one
the Lightning
where...
came back and won the next 4.
Yeah, I was going to say the Lightning won in 5, right?
Yeah, and then they did it again in the bubble where the Bruins won game 1 and the Lightning won the next 4, but that was at a neutral site location. It was in the bubble in Toronto. So for the fans who are like, oh my gosh, the Lightning didn't win a game against Toronto, and what is this going to mean if they meet in the playoffs and Vasi can't, play at his usual level against Toronto? I thought Vasilevsky had a fantastic game last night. So if you have any lingering concerns about Vasilevsky, like the shots that got past him, maybe the Marner shot, that was a hell of a shot from Mitch Marner back across the green. That was the one that just beat him. Yeah. The others were 2 were rebounds on very, very tough first saves, and the other Nyes has an open net where it's a 2-on-0 down low. Think of the saves that Vasilevsky made. Now, what does this mean in a playoff series? Maybe something, maybe nothing. We just don't know. So I wouldn't put too much stock into the result last night and even how the game went last night if we're trying to figure out what is this going to mean in a playoff series. But I will say this. If the Lightning play the Toronto Maple Leafs in a playoff series, they are going to have to do a better job not letting, in particular, the Matthews line dance around and make these plays, which the Lightning can do to the opposition. It is way easier said than done, but they got turned into a pretzel numerous times last night by those 3 players, and they paid for it. Now, the first 2 goals against, we can get to the actual game. The first 2 goals against were avoidable turnovers. Those that don't get out and they're held in right at the blue line and reversed quickly, those are problems because you have your players in the defensive zone out of position. They're in a position for a breakout. They're not in a position for a turnover and a quick counter. And it happened not once but twice. And that's why Coop was really upset. And in between those goals, which came early in the game, the Lightning gave up a 2-on-1, and Vasi made an unreal save on Bobby McMahon.
Right.
Could have been 3-0. And then a little bit of a bad break, but they still gave it up. Tavares comes out of the penalty box and gets a breakaway. Vasi stopped that one too. So the Leafs could have scored more than 2 in the first period based on the chances that they got. But if we are just going to say, like, what do the Lightning need to do to have success against Toronto? There are teams that do a better job, I think, than the Lightning have done this year on Toronto's top line. What is it going to take? I mean, you have to try and erase them. You have to. Matthews is a hard guy to erase because he's big and strong and he's got a great stick. Marner is slippery as an eel. And he is so crafty that if you have the puck, I mean, we talk about the giveaway takeaway stat, put that in the garbage. But if you watch Mitch Marner play, he is one of the best players in the league at taking the puck away. He is so smart. He is so good with his stick. He knows where to, he angles his body in a way where, like, you're trying to avoid him and he gets there and he can steal it. It almost happened a few times last night. And Marner was actually annoyed almost with himself that he didn't make the steal, right? So it is a challenge. I think the Lightning are going to have to do a better job. And they're going to have to do a better job in a potential playoff series than they did during the regular season series and than they did last night. However, if we're just looking at last night's game and comparing it to the other three, this was by a wide margin the Lightning's best performance against Toronto.
Yep.
They carried play for much of the night. Yes, the Matthews line got their looks, but it was against flow of play, basically. I mean, for the Lightning to have 90 shot attempts, and some came in overtime, but they still got to 90. That is very rare. And the only way you get to 90 shot attempts, there are two ways, and they both have to happen. Number one, you have to have the puck a lot. And number two, you have to have a shooting mentality. So remember we had that fan who wrote in about, like, I'm concerned about the low shot total and the Lightning are passing up shots. I mean, they really didn't do that much last night. They were looking to shoot. The problem was, and you spelled this out, of their 90 shot attempts, only 28 went on net.
That's incredible.
And what Coop said, whatever the number was for Toronto, because some of those shots that were blocked were actually like friendly fire. They basically were blocked by a Lightning player. So the number of attempts that were blocked for the Lightning were 36. The number that Toronto blocked were 33. So what Coop said afterward, of the 36 or whatever it was, I think he said 35, but mid-30s. He's like, they did not block 36 shots. And what he's saying is, like, the Lightning needed, he used the word execute. They needed to execute better when they had a shot to not just fire it into a massive humanity, right? Like, and maybe that means shooting sooner. Maybe that's waiting a beat and shooting later. And that doesn't even take into account the 26 that missed the net. Now, sometimes there's a guy in the shooting lane, so the shot is forced, like you're trying to get it around that guy and pick a corner and you miss. But, I mean, the Lightning had, I mean, they must have had at least half a dozen grade A plus chances. And Kucherov had a bunch that they airmailed over the net. And then they hit the 3 posts in the first period. So they had their looks. Their conversion rate was not high enough. Their conversion rate in terms of shot attempts that went on net and forced saves from Stolars was not high enough. And their conversion rate on the chances that they had that led to goals was certainly not high enough. But when you have 90 shot attempts, you're doing a lot of things right. And that was my point. And I thought their compete level was very high. And I think that you have to give them credit for rallying twice in the third period, especially that Nyes goal that made it 3-2 was a gut punch, because it's like the Lightning had worked and carried play. They finally got to 2-2, unlucky posts, missing the net. Stolars make saves. They pressed on the Leafs, and the puck just wasn't going in. They get the goal. On the next shift, they take a 4-minute high sticking. And a seeing eye shot from Marner. First of all, they lose the faceoff. Phil and I were both pretty emotional last night. If you listen to the broadcast, that was about as fired up as both of us got just about what was happening, because it felt like the stakes were high. I know it was a regular season game, but I think all the stuff that we talked about going into this game, how would the Lightning fare against Toronto here? The bad start, would they be able to come back? They got back to tie, and then they get the 4-minute. And Vasi makes an unreal save on Nyes right before the puck ends up going out of play. So there's a face-off. They don't have Glendening. Face-off is on the right side of Vasilevsky, so normally that would be Glendening. They have to send Gord out. Tavares wins it totally cleanly. Marner takes a shot. It's tipped. The Lightning do not erase Nyes, and it's hard. Like, he's a big, strong man. He is a smart player. He knows where to go. The puck wasn't free immediately. He kind of battled. It was a great play by Nyes, but he battled. He got it. He stayed with it. He slid it in. Very frustrating if you're the Lightning. And they took that gut punch, and they still got the game tied. Right. So all of this, to me, is very positive in terms of where the Lightning are at. And the last thing I'll say before I punt it back to you, what Coop talked about in the clip is absolutely right. That first home game back after a long road trip, and it was a long road trip. It was an 8-day trip, can be tough. And yes, the Leafs are playing the second half of a back-to-back, which we have to acknowledge. But sometimes when you're rolling right into the next night, like, you're kind of in the flow of things, and we saw that early in the game. Maybe some of what happened where they were bend but don't break, like the Lightning were against the Rangers. Some of that might have been the second half of the back-to-back for Toronto. But there was a disparity early in the game. The other thing I'll tell you, Greg, is, like, we didn't get out of New York until a couple hours after we were supposed to. There was some kind of what our flight guy, he actually sits opposite. I sit in the very back row of the plane, and he sits across. Todd is his name, and Todd came up, and he's like, yeah, we got a low ceiling. They've closed every runway but one. I'm like, what do you mean a low ceiling? It's basically fog, right? So we sat on the tarmac. I don't even know how long, 2 hours maybe. I mean, the team didn't get home until after 3 a.m. I didn't get to bed until after 4. So that was, I'm not saying wow, boo-hoo. I'm just saying, like, travel hijinks can happen. And, you know, it was a late night back for the Lightning. That's what Coop said. We had one day off with weird sleep, and we come back the next day and have to play a team that was kind of rolling from the night before with a short trip from Sunrise. That might have factored in a little bit to how the game started, but the Lightning snapped to attention. It's not like the effects of the long road trip lingered. They got right back in the game with that power play where they hit a couple of posts. So I would say mostly positive last night, and they got a point. So now they're 3 points up on Florida, which is a step closer to trying to get home ice in the first round.
I think everything you said there about especially the Lightning's effort made a lot of sense. I think
and
that
no
was
Jake
important.
Gensel, too. That was the other.
No Jake Gensel and no Luke Glendening for a decent portion of that game, because faceoffs ended up being, you know, a little bit of a storyline in this game as well. I know we had some people chiming in with some questions. Chafee was back in the lineup. Bjorkstrand scored a goal, and he had a couple of power play goals. That was
a nice
to
finish.
See.
Remember we were talking about, like,
yes.
I thought, I don't know, but I thought that he might be a little more comfortable at the hash marks. He's closer to the net, and he has more net to shoot at, and he found the spot there, and he drilled it. It was a great shot.
It was a great shot, and that's what he does. Bad penalty by Lilleberg. You know, we talked about that, the high stick on
Shift
Tavares.
after a goal, too.
Yeah, which is just, you know, those are the things, I'm stating the obvious, but in a playoff game, that can't happen because that's going to hurt you. And that's a no-brainer. I mean, you get the stick up, and there's blood, and that's kind of where things materialize. But I did find it intriguing, and look, sometimes this does happen. It just felt like, particularly Kucherov, partner, just felt like a little off, didn't he? With his shot.
Which is
it was just
funny that you say that, because I believe he finished with 20 shot attempts.
That's what I mean, but like,
0.
He just, it felt like he had a hard time.
Only 2 on net.
That's what I mean.
He missed the net 8 times.
So it wasn't like he wasn't getting open, and maybe he wasn't looking to shoot. He clearly was, but he just had one of those days, right, where it's
I mean,
frustrating.
It's rare. So it's rare to see 90 shot attempts in a game.
Huh.
It's rare to see Kucherov have 20 shot attempts and have only 2 go on net. So it was a little bit of a strange game all the way around. But I will tell you a couple of guys. I'm going to give you 3 guys who I thought really distinguished themselves last night on the Lightning. Hedman. Phil made him a star.
Good point.
Victor was really good last night. He hit a post, crossbar in the first period, scored the tying goal, played a lot. He had 16 shot attempts. He played nearly 26 minutes, which led all Lightning players. I mean, the Lightning had some power play time, which bumped up the numbers for the guys who play in the power play. But Victor was looking to shoot, which is a very good sign. I thought Braden Point was flying last night. Like, he was a handful for the Maple Leafs. Just like we talked about the Matthews line being a difficult line for the Lightning to deal with last night. I mean, it's funny. Point and Kucherov finished -2 because I think they were out there for the overtime goal. But they created a lot that Toronto was like, ugh. Like, I mean, they didn't really have an answer for them. It was just by hook or by crook, the puck stayed out. You know, Kucherov, a lot of the shot attempts came when he, Point, and Gord were out on the ice. They carried play a lot. I thought Point drove that line in a really effective way. When we see Braden Point skate like he skated last night, you should feel good if you're a Lightning fan. That's the Braden Point the Lightning are going to need in the playoffs. And we saw that guy last night. And then the third guy I thought was Gage Gonçalves. Now, I'm going to give this as a caveat. The Cirelli line was tasked with matching against the Matthews line. And it was a tough matchup. It was, because the Matthews line did some damage. And Gonçalves was part of that line with Hagel. But I thought Gage did a lot of good things last night. I thought he was skating maybe as well as I've seen him skate this year in the NHL. And he won, I don't want to say a ton, but he won more than his fair share of puck battles. And some of those came against Marner, where he and Marner are along the boards. There's a puck battle. Gonçalves comes up with it. It's not like Marner is going to win a puck battle by like overpowering you, but I just talked about how he's such a smart player. He's so good with his stick.
He is.
And Gonçalves was able to break through a lot of that. He won puck battles. He navigated through the neutral zone. I mean, I'm curious to see if they keep him on that line for tomorrow's game against Detroit. But again, kind of almost beyond this game, like when you see Braden Point play like that, you're like, all right, this is the guy that the Lightning are going to need. When you see Gage Gonçalves play like that, you're like, okay, keep it going. If he can play like that, the Lightning are going to be really well equipped to make the other team uncomfortable. And when Victor is skating and shooting and scoring and looking to unload that big shot, I mean, the goal he scored was on a wrist shot, but even that had some zip to it. I thought those 3 guys really distinguished themselves well. And I'm going to give a mention to Vasilevsky too, which is weird because he gave up 4. I mean, his save percentage at the end of the night was just like 31 shots he faced, but goodness gracious, did he make saves on some dangerous chances. And, you know, maybe to the extent that he's like, I had 2 bad games against Toronto this year. This was a much better performance from Vasilevsky. And maybe, you know, if they meet in the playoffs, that's something that he can kind of hang his hat on. Not that he needs it. I mean, he's got enough experience, I think, and enough success that I don't think that that's going to really affect him. But those were 4 guys I mentioned anyway.
Well, point, how about the fight?
I didn't even mention that.
I mean, the fight. Now, I think he knocked down
McMahon.
McMahon, I don't think was, in fairness, when you watch that, I don't think McMahon was ready to drop the gloves and was in the best position to protect himself, like you would see 2 guys who are...
Point got him.
Point twice.
Yeah.
I mean, he basically threw off his gloves and just nailed him before the guy could even flinch.
But it was a key penalty because that was the penalty that put the Lightning in the power play and they tied the game at 3.
Yeah, for sure.
The Leafs took some dumb penalties last night, and look, I'm not going to pick apart their game. They're a great team. I thought Tanev was fantastic. I don't know how many block shots he had. We were talking about him. How many was he credited with? Only 5. I feel like every time the Lightning were taking a shot, it was hitting him. He was standing in front of the net. As Luke said, he was really good at just making the smart, simple play, getting pucks out of trouble. I was impressed with Toronto's performance. But the penalties that they took were not good. During the 4-minute power play, the Leafs scored in the front end. They're in the offensive zone. On the second one, Domi trips Hedman. Took the Leafs off the power play. The Bobby McMann penalty is a cross-check in the offensive zone. Why are you putting the Lightning back on the power play? Why are you doing that? It was a dumb penalty. And then they had the fight. I understand that. But why are you cross-checking Braden Point? Why? Makes no sense. I mean, if you're Craig Berube, you're like, what are we doing? Yeah. Like, if you're up 3-2 in the third period in a playoff game, why are you even inviting a penalty from the referees in the offensive zone?
It's a great question. I don't know.
So, I mean,
you'd have to ask.
Were there other penalties? Tavares had a tripping penalty.
That was a bad penalty.
Yeah. That was right after the Nyes
Toronto
goal.
scored.
Right
Toronto
after the
scored.
face-off.
Right? It was a 2-0 after
Yeah.
that penalty. Like,
yeah,
and that's
no,
one of those where
they scored the second goal, and then Tavares.
then he takes the
tripped.
penalty. That's what I mean. Then he takes the
tripped-
penalty.
Did he trip Cirelli?
Points.
He tripped somebody.
Was it Point or Cirelli, you're right. It was.
Yeah,
Cirelli.
I'm not sure who he tripped, but it was right off the face-off.
You're right.
And
Terrible penalty.
the Lawton penalty at the end of the second, I don't really remember that one. But I remember the Domi one, and I remember the McMahon one because they were in the third period. One took the Leafs off the power play, and the other put the Lightning on the power play, and they tied the game. And both happened in the offensive zone.
Right.
So, I mean, these things happen. The Leafs are happy that they got the win. They've solidified their hold on first place. They did not pick up a regulation win, though. So, I mean, as we look at this gap of 3 points, the Lightning are going to have to make up those points by winning a game that the Leafs don't win. So if the Lightning make up that ground with a regulation win, somehow they make up the 3 points, and they are picking up an extra regulation win than Toronto, the Lightning would win the tiebreaker. Because, I mean, Toronto didn't get a regulation win last night either. The second tiebreaker is regulation overtime wins, and the Leafs have a big advantage there. So the Lightning are going to have to win the first tiebreaker outright. But, I mean, they still have a path to do that, depending on how these last 4 games unfold.
At Bolts Radio, if you want to get involved on the conversation, what did you make of the Lightning's play last night? Did you feel a little more confident if they were to play Toronto in a playoff series based off of what you saw last night? And just first place in general, do you think it's still legitimately in play now for Tampa Bay, even though they had the loss in overtime, but did pick up a point? Andrew on Facebook says, I'm a bit concerned with the penalty kill over the last week. Glad to see the power play has gotten going.
Yeah, I actually asked Chernak after the skate yesterday morning about the penalty kill. And, you'd given up goals in 3 straight games. Now it's given up goals in 4 straight games. And as we talked about, the goals were a little different in those 3 games. And, he kind of talked about, like, the power play teams have executed pretty well, is basically what he's saying. He mentioned the Buffalo power play. And he's like, if they switch it to Tage Thompson, that's my guy. So they're drawing me out. I have to step out to try and block the shot because we know Thompson can shoot it in, right? So that is pulling Chernak away from the front of the net. He's like, if they go back to the point, it's kind of a 2-on-1 down low. And that's exactly what happened on the goal. So part of it was in the Buffalo game, Buffalo executed really well. And he didn't express massive concern. I mean, special teams do go through like ebbs and flows. I will say this, though. If they are without Glendening, that will put them at a disadvantage in the faceoff circle on penalty kill. He does help them to win faceoffs and get pucks down the ice, and that is a big part of alleviating. First of all, it alleviates pressure when you're killing a penalty. It's also putting the onus on the power play team to re-enter the zone. So one clear will kill, let's say 10 seconds, but it could kill 30 seconds, could kill 50 seconds, depending on like how difficult it is for the power play team to re-enter the zone and get set up. That's why that opening face-off to start a power play or penalty kill is so important. That to me would be a bigger like concern area than the fact that they've given up goals now in 4 straight games. Their penalty kill's been good this year.
Yeah, for sure.
Toronto's a good power play too.
They're going to make you uncomfortable. The key there is just don't go in the penalty box as much.
And they did a fairly good job of.
Yeah.
I mean, the referees kind of let both teams play last night. Now Toronto fans will be like, "What do you mean? Four power plays for the Lightning, only 2 for the Leafs?" Well, the penalties that Toronto took were bad penalties. Like they had to call them. I guess they didn't have to call them, but they were warranted.
Chris on YouTube says, this damn Nyes is a Lightning killer. He scores every game.
I even said that when he scored the second goal. He kills the Lightning just like Nylander. I saw before the game that Matthews and Nylander had each scored 10 goals against Vasilevsky. That's regular season. Nyes is getting close to that. Goodness gracious. I remember he scored in the first meeting between the teams in Tampa. He scored the opening goal. He's a smart player. I mean, the 2 goals that weren't on the power play, he basically had open nets.
Yeah.
But he got in position and the puck came to him. Matthews is such a smart player. So on the Nyes goal that made it 2-0, Lightning don't clear. It was actually a pass up the boards to Kucherov, and it's weird to say this because it happens so infrequently, it handcuffed him. So it ricocheted off of him from the sideboards to the middle of the ice near the blue line, and Marner scooted over, got it, reversed it to Matthews, and the Leafs had a 2-on-1 down low. And if you watch the replay, Matthews can shoot a puck in, but he knows where Nyes is. And he kind of shoots to essentially the far pad of Vasilevsky. We talk about that. Shooting, if it goes in, great. If it doesn't go in, there's a rebound that's coming right to your teammate. That's exactly what happened. Matthews' shot, which was low and hard and difficult to handle, went to it wasn't as much of an angle. It was a little bit more in the middle of the ice, but it was still a little bit of an angle. And it went to the far pad, which led to a rebound to the other side. And Nyes was there. He had an open net. So, and then the overtime goal. I mean, Matthews makes a great pass there. He put it in an area where Vasilevsky couldn't get a stick on it to deflect it away.
It was incredible, that pass. And I say that every time I watch him play. He's got an elite shot, of course, but I think he's just an incredible playmaker.
Yeah.
Too. And I just think that's kind of where he is. I mean, he impresses me when I see him play every single time on the ice. Chris on X says Lilleberg has to stay out of the box. Even removing his major penalties, he is significantly ahead of everyone else on the team. You can't have that from your third pair D-man. Also bewildered by the Howard news. Can't lose him for nothing.
Yeah, we haven't even gotten into that. And we have no knowledge beyond just what has been reported. And it was reported from Elliot Friedman, so that's a pretty good source. And I guess the Detroit Free Press had something in there, too, about Howard has said he's going back to Michigan State. We'll get to that in a second. I didn't really think that Lilleberg had taken more minor penalties than other players. I mean, it's not like the Lightning have been shorthanded appreciably more than other teams, and they haven't been shorthanded more than they've been on the power play. There's a stat that I always look at before every game, more so for the other team, because I kind of know where the Lightning are at. But it is an indicative stat. I may have mentioned it to you once or twice when the Lightning's opponent is remarkably good or remarkably not good in this department, and it's special teams differential. So it's basically how much more time are you on the power play than the penalty kill or vice versa. So I'm going to it right now. I mean, the top team is Detroit, their opponent tomorrow. So this is a good segue maybe to talk about what the Lightning have to deal with tomorrow. The Detroit Red Wings have been on the power play 79 more minutes than they've been shorthanded. Now, if you have a bad penalty kill and you're giving up goals, you're not going to be on the penalty kill as much because, a penalty kill is going to end after 30 seconds than 2 minutes. But over the course of a season, if you're at plus 79, that means that you are on the power play a lot more than you are on the penalty kill. The Lightning are a plus team, though. They're plus 27-37. So they have had, almost 30 more minutes this year on the power play than they have on the penalty kill. But the fan was asking about Lilleberg. I haven't actually noticed that, but that was a stick penalty that you have to avoid. in Lilleberg's defense, which isn't really much of a defense, but the reason that penalty happened moments before, the Lightning had an opportunity to get the puck out and didn't. The Leafs held it in, and we had the penalty in front of the net. So here's the thing with Howard. First of all, this is a report. So it's not like a high school player who like commits to a school, right? You see him signing the paper, right? Howard has just said, I'm going back to Michigan State. So I will just say this, and this is just my guess, because I'm assuming that there was no like official paperwork that he is signing. Like, he may just have said that to try and speed the process along. I mean, I don't think it's likely that that's going to happen, but the Lightning could still sign him, and he may be like, well, I decided not to go back to Michigan State for a fourth year. I mean, that could happen, right? It may not happen. Based on these reports, it seems like it won't happen, but I just wanted to state that up front. The second part is the Lightning still hold his rights. They hold his rights until, I believe, next August, 2026. Steve, you can correct me on this if I'm wrong. I think I read that somewhere. So we might be in the same situation if he goes back for a final year of college eligibility. Michigan State has a good season. They get into the playoffs. They win it. They don't win it, whatever. I mean, the Lightning could still sign him at that point. They would still hold his rights. He could get into a game and burn that first year of the entry-level deal. It would just be a year from now. The players that run out the clock literally have to run out the clock, and they aren't getting that opportunity. They've decided that they are not going to stay with that team. They want to see what else is out there. But if you make that choice, you forfeit the opportunity to burn that first year of your ELC. I mean, if we fast forward a year from now, Howard finishes in Michigan State, he's done with his college career. The only team that he can go to play in the NHL is the Lightning.
Correct.
Get that one game and burn the year. And then he's into year 2 the next year. So we'll see. I think that this chapter is far from being finished. But I can understand why Lightning fans are upset and surprised, because it seemed like, we even said it on the show, it seemed like where there's a will, there's a way. They were going to get him signed. Right. So
what Steve texts us here looks like for free agency for Howard, August 15th of 2026.
Yeah, so I said August. Yeah. So
here you go.
He may have not been 100% certain that he was going to be done at Michigan State too. He might have been like 90% sure, and then it's finally like, you know what? I'm just going back for my final year. We'll see.
Jared,
we need somebody in a position of authority with the Lightning to be able to tell us what's going on, and I don't think they're going to come on Power Lunch and tell us.
Jared, let's see if we can get Howard on the show, yes. And I want to get his thoughts on this process, because I think that will
not win him any favors with Julian Breezeball. Isaac Howard joins us on Power Lunch.
And I'll have Julian on as well.
Yes.
We'll do a little round
being
table.
the mediators between.
Yeah, well, that's what we do. Michael on YouTube says, I know the numbers say they're fine, but the Lightning just cannot beat a big, heavy team like that. Too soft in front of their net, too many hope passes and giveaways. No winning of board battles.
Well, I disagree, Michael. They won a lot of board battles last night. Matthews is a tough guy to erase. He just is. He's a big, strong man. He's one of the best players in the NHL. But I think the Lightning they've beaten all sorts of teams. And I actually wouldn't say, you talked to Brian Engblom. I actually heard him say this on the last call last night with JP Peterson, because he was kind of comparing, contrasting what Toronto does to the Lightning as opposed to what Florida does to the Lightning. In his opinion, Florida is actually the bigger, heavier team, the punch you in the mouth type team. And the Lightning have beaten Florida this year, and they probably outplayed them a little bit in the last game. The game that was very close, they lost, 2-1? That snapped their long winning streak. I think they played well in that game.
Yeah.
Toronto has some big, strong players, and really we're talking about Matthews and Nyes, right? I mean, a lot of their other guys I would term as slippery. Tavares is slippery. Nylander's slippery. Marner, for sure, is very slippery. Morgan Riley is slippery. You know, like he's got that juke to his game. They pose different, challenges.
I think that heavy thing sometimes is a little bit overrated. I think the Lightning have shown they can tango with any team in the playoffs. I mean, I think you could say, does a heavier team give a guy like Kucherov more problems or not? Hard to say when a guy puts up as many points as he has throughout a year. I'd have to go back and look and say, okay, is he being contained a little differently with teams who are quote unquote heavier than not? I don't know. I tend to think that's a little bit overplayed, but I don't want to discount Michael's observation there. If he feels like that's kind of where things are for the Lightning, then, I mean, who would you say is a big, heavy team in the East? I mean, is Washington? Maybe.
I mean, they were. I think when the
Ovechkin,
Lightning lost to them in
Wilson.
2018, they were.
They definitely were then.
Yeah, I'm not sure that that's quite the makeup of their team now. I think they're just solid. They're structured. They're solid. They make you pay for mistakes.
I mean, would you say
For sure.
Ottawa is a heavy team? I mean, nothing.
Yeah, you're really making me think about it right now.
Yeah, I'm trying to. Carolina, I don't think is.
No.
Right? I don't
No.
think. I mean, are the Panthers?
That was the team that
So Kachuk,
Brian mentioned.
Bennett, but Kachuk,
And also the way that they play, like they will engage.
So maybe that's the bigger. Hey, Michael, maybe that's where you're getting at.
And it's not engage
know?
by fighting. I just mean engage physically.
Yeah,
like they
for
want to punish you.
They do. And Kachuk and Bennett are two guys that come to mind. Do that, but Kachuk might be. I don't know what he's going to look like.
Well, and Bennett too. You just had that report from George Richards. Bennett's going to miss the final.
So
few games of the
that's
regular
probably
season.
precautionary. But look, you don't miss games if you're not banged up, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of how I would look at it. Andrew on Facebook says, I normally think this is a stupid stat, but the Lightning are 8-13 in 1-goal games. Are they comfortable being uncomfortable, like Brian often references, like they were in the 3 straight Cup final runs?
Well, do those 13 losses include the overtime
I don't know.
shootout defeats? Because, I mean, they lost in overtime last night. I'll say this, Brian. I think the Lightning have scored, because they've scored a lot of empty net goals this year. There have probably been some 1-goal games that they've won that are 1-goal games that are not 1-goal games, because they had a 1-goal lead and they scored an empty netter to win by 2. I think, so here's the stat that I will bring up, because it was only 2 games up until they dropped the game in Buffalo in a shootout. The Lightning's record when leading after 2. A lot of those games, I can actually look up and see what it is. Because I know they have 1 regulation loss and 2 losses in a shootout. And that's it. I'll give you how many wins they have. Leading after 2, Lightning are 36-1-2. So those games that they've led haven't all been like by a goal, but a lot of them have been by a goal.
Yeah.
So if you're up by 1 entering the third period and you're winning, I mean, forget the majority, almost all of the games, that should tell you what you need to know about their ability to play with a lead.
Are we grasping?
That'll have the 1-goal game stat too, so I'll take a look at that as well.
Are we grasping at straws here a little bit to poke holes at the Lightning, or do you think there's some things here that are popping up that we should be concerned about?
I don't know.
When we talk about heavy team,
Yeah,
we're talking about 1-goal leads.
and actually,
like,
this has the 1-goal record is different than what he had.
Yeah.
Because it has them at 10-9-6 now, 10-9-7 because they lost in overtime. So they've lost more than they have won when you include the overtime shootout losses.
Right.
But it's not quite as. What did he have? 8-13. I'm not quite sure where he got that.
Yeah, I don't have any context there other than
That's straight from the league. I didn't
Yeah.
come up with that off the top of my head.
right. I appreciate that question. And look, these are all valid observations. Sometimes I'm not seeing, for instance, the heaviness part being an issue.
Yeah,
The 1-goal lead, maybe.
People look at Matthews and how he dominated last night. And he did, even though his team didn't have the puck nearly as much. You know, like, how do you handle this guy? Well, it's hard. It's hard to handle a big, strong guy like Matthews. That's why he had 69 goals last year. He's one of the very best players in the NHL.
Yeah.
Because he can combine speed, skill, and size. But if the Lightning are going to have success in a playoff series against him, they're going to have to find a way to check him and take away his time and space, which they did to varying degrees of success, sometimes way less, sometimes more, in those 2 years that they saw each other in the playoffs. I mean, Game 7 in Toronto in 2022, the Lightning checked all those high-skill guys on Toronto. Toronto was flummoxed. Vasi was very good in that game, too. But, I mean, they did a pretty good job of keeping the core four in check.
Come on. You got that right.
Tavares had a goal that was wiped out. But, I mean, I remember Marner and Matthews and Nylander, their frustration was sky high. In that
I have to be clear with you. I think if you had some issues with Vasi against the Leafs, I thought he was really good last night. I know you mentioned that. I thought he was the better goaltender actually too last night. I felt like
Stolarz made some good saves.
He did, but you hit
was
four
probably
posts.
a little rattled when those three shots went past him and
I
hit
think
the bar.
Does. Now the goaltenders will say, I had you played perfectly. That's the only place you could shoot.
Well, that's if you hit the post once, but you hit the post 3 times in like
that indicated
4 minutes.
To me. Yeah, that indicated to me that he just maybe wasn't tracking well. Or maybe the angles were a bit off. Look, I'm not a goaltender. I only play one on TV. But it's one of those things I looked at and I said, well, look, if the Lightning can get some shots, and maybe there was some urgency there from Toronto to like, hey, we noticed that too. We're going to do everything we can not to have a lot of these shots get through. I mean, you can pick up on some of these things in a game, if a guy has it or not. But
those were 3 of the 26 shots that missed the net.
Yeah.
If you hit the post, it counts as a shot that misses the net.
Right.
Unless it's deflected by a defending player. And then I think it counts as a shot block. But those were not. Those were straight off the bar.
Correct. Let's see here. Rick on YouTube says, always love the show, guys. Thank you. We appreciate that, Rick. We really do. Let me see if there's any questions coming here through X. Oh, I got a bunch, partner, here.
You got them all. I didn't get any.
I
usually get them from email.
Yeah, sometimes they don't tag you on X. They just tag me for whatever reason. Maybe they
love you.
Read it.
They know that I don't dabble in X as much as you do.
You only dabble.
Actually, I don't know if you dabble.
When you show the video of the press of the radio booth, and then we have.
Well, I post it, but then I'm not.
And then somebody
on
says
X
that looks like the right
game.
place.
Yeah, but Bolts fan.
That always makes me
Benny,
chuckle.
Is that who it is? Bolts
it
fan
always
Benny?
makes me chuckle. I love
Yes.
it. Noel Time, great hearing from you, Noel Time. He says it appears the Bolts' chance of a run in the postseason will hinge on Ottawa taking out the Leafs. Beating Florida will be hard enough, but could happen. The Leafs own us.
Well, I'll harken back to what I said at the top of the show. I wouldn't put too much stock into what has happened in the regular season series.
But do you feel like a lot of people have?
Well, they're going off of what they're seeing. They remember. Right. So the Leafs they've had success against the Lightning in the last 2 regular seasons. And prior to that, they had success against the Lightning in the 2023 playoffs. That's what people are thinking about. What I'm saying is, in a playoff series, it is a whole new ball game. Now, the Lightning won game 1 on the road in Toronto in 2023 and lost the series, but there is something sometimes like when you have kind of controlled the matchup and you're like, all right, this is the matchup we wanted. We're entering the playoffs, and you get punched in the mouth in game 1. You're like, what is going on here? As opposed to more even series, you lose game 1, you're like, all right, we got to get it back. Or maybe you're on the wrong end of the regular season series, and you're like, this narrative needs to change. It's almost more shocking. We saw that with the Lightning in Columbus, which was a shocking game 1 because Columbus came back from 3-0 down. But it was almost like the Lightning didn't really know how to handle it because this team that they had controlled all of a sudden, like, punched them in the mouth, right? So, I don't know. I forget what the rest of the question entailed, but just about, he talked about Toronto losing to Ottawa. Look, winning a playoff series is no easy feat, no matter the opponent. And I tell you what, like the Battle of Ontario can take on a life of its own too.
Sure.
So
that's 100% correct.
I mean, Ottawa, Lightning fans are not crazy about Toronto. Let me tell you this. The Ottawa fans hate Toronto. It's like a white-hot rivalry that has been lopsided for years because the Senators haven't made the playoffs since 2017, and 2017 was the first year that this iteration of the Leafs made the playoffs. Think about the trajectory of those two franchises since 2017, and if the Senators get the Leafs in the first round, remember that play with Ridley Gregg, the slap shot into the empty net?
Yeah.
Last
I
year.
do.
Like,
Now
that's
that you
what we've
mention that.
got.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Good point.
I don't know.
I actually
mean,
think Ottawa's been.
Luke was like, they just don't want Florida. Like,
Yeah.
I know we've talked about finishing first means for the Lightning they would avoid Toronto and Florida. That is still not completely certain based on what happens with Ottawa in these final few games. But I kind of do hearken back to no matter who you get, like, you just need to play well. You need to play well.
that's fair.
Are some matchups
that's
better
fair.
than others?
Yeah.
Probably.
They are.
Yeah, but it comes
They
down
are.
to performing.
It does.
And I
It
maintain,
does.
like, the Lightning have to check these high skill guys on Toronto because they haven't done a good enough job of limiting their time and space and their ability to make plays through these 4 regular season games. Last night was the best of the bunch, but even in that game, the Matthews line had too much time and space to make plays.
Do you think in order for that to happen, I agree with you, because I kind of envision, that's kind of a Yanni Gourde, Sorelli, Hagel, Gergensen, guys that can get in on the floor and hit you. Like, Yanni Gourde is perfect for playoff hockey because I think he's got one mission. I'm going to dump and chase.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can make some plays. But
you're talking about from the red line into the other team.
Yeah,
Now. I'm talking about
when they have the puck.
I mean, what happened? Hagel was the one that turned the puck over on
Yeah.
the first goal. I mean, it's about executing. You need to alleviate pressure. When the Matthews line is out on the ice, whatever you do, do not allow them to play in your zone.
Yeah.
If you have to, like, have a 50-50 or whatever Coop calls it, like a tie shift, you're not really dominating, but neither are they. Take it. Take it against that line. Try and bend the ice against, the Domi line. That was what Luke was talking about. He's like, their bottom 6 is, like, survive against Matthews'
Yeah,
line.
right.
Don't let them dance around in your zone. Yes, part of it is, going to work in the offensive zone, make them play defense. That would be great. But at the very least, if you have a chance to get a puck out, it has to get out of the zone.
I actually think that's a little bit of a bugaboo. I mean, everybody's pointing out some of these warts by the Lightning. Getting the puck out when you have the chance the first time. Now, I think a lot of teams are like that sometimes. But that seems like it does crop up a little bit.
The 2 that they had last night were both unforced.
Yeah.
Hagel made a pass attempt when it should have been in retrospect, it should have been chipped. If he makes the pass that's tape to tape, there's no problem.
Sure.
The pass was offline. Matthews held it in. The second one, Kucherov didn't handle the pass.
Was that a tough pass? I mean, for Kuch, you could
it
say,
was
like,
along
he's
the near
got great
boards,
hands.
and I didn't see an angle of, like, what happened. All you could see is he's standing along the boards, and the puck comes to him, and then it bounces to the middle of the ice.
I need to look at that again. I felt like it was one of those where, you're kind of, look, 99 out of 100, he's probably a guy with those hands makes that play, but I felt like it wasn't the best pass.
He was, I mean, that probably didn't warrant a chip. That warranted a pass because he was open.
Yeah.
But he didn't handle it.
Right.
The safe play is always the chip. I mean, as long as you're not icing it. Toronto's got a great face-off team beyond Tavares. Matthews is really good. They have good guys who can win face-offs, or they have guys who are good at winning face-offs.
No update on Glendening, correct?
Not after the game.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, like, take the tie. In a playoff series, understand which are the lines that, I mean, every line can hurt you potentially, but which are the lines that, like, you really have to be buttoned up.
Yeah.
And being buttoned up means, don't give them extra time in your end. And the Lightning in the regular season anyway, they have not handled that very well. And staying out of the box is important too, because Toronto is a good power play again this year.
Thomas says, I'm concerned over no sense of urgency coming out of last night. It feels like they're playing out the string at this point till game 83.
I couldn't disagree more, Thomas. I'm sorry. Did you see how hard they played last night?
They played hard.
They played very hard. They had a bad start. And against a good team. So a couple of things happened. They had a bad start. They had a couple of flubs early in the game. That was problem one. Problem two, those flubs happened when the Matthews line was out on the ice. Like if the flub happens with, the Pontus Holmberg line on the ice, maybe they get a chance, but it's far more dangerous when it's Marner and Matthews shooting the puck. One went in and the other led to the rebound goal. So it was kind of the double whammy there. But did they play that game with low urgency? I don't think so. I disagree, Thomas. Sorry. That had a playoff feel to it.
Right.
I think the Lightning were invested.
I agree. I didn't have a problem with the effort. Just because they had some issues there at the beginning doesn't mean the effort wasn't there. I think just the execution. Is that fair to say on some of those things? Dustin says, I think Gage Gonsalves after the Four Nations break was one of our best players for a few weeks. He was great last night, but there's something I'd like to mention, and I think should be considered. The second line of Hagel and Cirelli, whether Gage, Paul, or someone else is there, it should be noted when Geeky lined up with Cirelli and Hagel, he did a lot of heavy lifting and forechecking with his size. I think when he was sent down, it forced Cirelli to be heavier on the forecheck, which dropped productivity. That's another interesting observation.
Yeah, I'd have to go back and look and see. Geeky hit a point where he hit a wall, and he was not being as effective, which is why they sent him down, and they're keeping him down. He has, I think Ed did a story on Geeky has actually bonded with Connor Sherry, the two Connors, each with one N in their first name.
Yeah.
But that's been a neat story, and Geeky, after a little bit of a slow start offensively, has picked it up. So I think the Lightning are just going to let him do what he needs to do in Syracuse. I don't know if the fan is suggesting they call him back up and put him on that line. I don't think that is going to happen. But let's keep in mind, Cirelli's had a very productive year. He has set career highs in goals and points, and I think he's one assist away from either tying or surpassing his previous high in assists. And the Geeky effective period on that line, I think, came mostly early in the year. So either he was on the line and he'd kind of started slowing down, or he hasn't been on that line. I mean, Nick Paul is built in, like, I should reverse it. Geeky is built in the mold of a Paul, right? I mean, Paul can get in on the forecheck. Paul's a big, strong guy. I liked Gage Gonsalves on the line last night. I just think that the line with McDonough and Chernak had a night where they had some problems dealing with the other team's best. But it wasn't like the Matthews line dominated the whole game. I mean, the Lightning did, I think what Coop said, he said we leaned on them for 57 minutes. That's a fair assessment. It's just that when the Matthews line got a chance in the offensive zone, it felt like they were either dangerous or they were almost dangerous. Like you could sense a problem might be about to happen, and the Lightning somehow navigated through it.
We got a few more questions coming in, but I want to save them for tomorrow because I don't want to rush through them. And, of course, the Lightning have a game tomorrow.
Yeah, Detroit at Florida tonight.
Detroit, yeah. So
just real quick, the Rangers, do you see their final? They lost 8-5 at home to the Flyers.
I mean,
there were two empty netters in there, but they had multiple leads. This is, I mean, they're basically, I think their tragic number is at 1. So they need to win out, and they have to have Montreal lose out, and they need to pass all these other teams. The Rangers are toast, basically.
Yeah,
the other teams, though, are 8 points back, and they have 10 remaining points available to them. Detroit is one of those teams. I don't think Montreal plays tonight. I think Montreal plays at Ottawa tomorrow. So Detroit can make up 2 points. They are still in the mix. This game has massive importance for Detroit. How will they bounce back, though, from that really deflating loss to Montreal? We'll see. If they don't get the win tonight, they're going to have to win out. And they have no more mulligans. So they could help the Lightning, actually, by beating the Panthers. Somehow preventing the Panthers from getting 2 points would help the Lightning. But we'll see. And then they finish the back-to-back tomorrow against the Lightning. If we expect Johansson to get at least one of the games in this homestand, would it be the Detroit game? Would it be the Buffalo game? I think Vasi would play against Florida, don't you?
I would think.
Unless the teams are locked into their respective positions.
Johansson's getting a little more work than I thought here towards the end, which is good. I don't have a problem with that. And I would anticipate at least one more. So we'll see which one that is. Partner, great job. We will do it again tomorrow in this setting. Thanks to Steve Ersnick. Thanks to you guys for participating. Keep sending those questions in. We didn't get to all of them, but we'll do for sure tomorrow. And we'll get you set for the game tomorrow as well. I'm Greg Linnelli. You've been listening to Power Lunch on Lightning Radio.